In front of you is every single Fortnite Creative device, and in this video, I'm going to give you one tip for every single one of them. So yeah, there's kind of no time to waste, so let's get to it. One tip for the Accolade device is more with XP. Just because you put an Accolade device on your island doesn't mean you have XP on your island. After you publish your island, you still need to calibrate your XP on your island. Just keep that in mind. Next up, we got the Advanced Storm Controller and the Advanced Storm Controller Beacon. You would use this one to make a storm, and then you would use this to make phases of the storm. I have a full tutorial about storms if you want to go check that one out. The AI navigation device, you can use this to make AI avoid or just completely block areas. So if there's somewhere in your island where your NPCs are walking into, but you don't want them to be there, you can place this device down and it'll block it. In the AI patrol path node, you can set an option on show the play path in play mode, so you can debug if you want. When you're using an air vent, make sure in your island settings have environment damage set to off, otherwise you will destroy objects. And be careful while you're using an air vent in creative mode, because you might destroy builds or something that you don't want to destroy. You can use the analytic device to track events, like let's say we call this event name finish, and we can track this inside the creator portal, but just note there's a hard limit of 50 analytic devices in your map. For the animated mesh device, you can add in a skeletal mesh. I imported my own skeletal mesh, and you can add in your animation, which will be walking. So now in game, this will be walking. In the armored battle bus, you can have up to 7 players. There's 1 player in the driving seat, there's 2 players in the front, 2 players in the back, and then 2 gunners. In the ATK spawner, the roof of the ATK is bouncy, so you can use that to make some cool things. Next up, with the attribute evaluator, you can track different stats, and you can weigh it against what the player currently has. So let's say if you have it on eliminations, the player will need at least 10 eliminations for it to pass, so we can evaluate the player on a channel. If the player doesn't have 10 eliminations, that the evaluator will not work. You can also detect if it succeeds or fails using these 2 events. In the audio mixer, you can add in your own bus, so you can add in anything you want. So for example, you can add in fourth footstep, and you can make it so it can be heard by none. So this will make it so you've turned off footstep. In the audio player, there's 2 yellow circles surrounding it. There's one smaller one, one big one. Basically what this is that the small one is the maximum range from where you can hear the loudest noise, and then the far away one is where the fall off ends. So for the automated turret, you can add an option called the show wire, and this will basically make it so the player can shoot a little wire that will then disable the turret. For the ball spawner, if you don't make the vase visible during game, the ball will fall without needing to be pushed or anything. In the baller spawner, you can actually change the grappler range of the baller, so you can make it so you can shoot the grappler further or less if you want to. In the barrier device, you can actually ignore players if you use either ignore team, and you can use ignore class, or you can add players to ignore list by using this channel, or you can remove or you can remove all, and you can make it so certain players can ignore the barrier and walk through it while other ones can't. The only tip for the basic storm controller is that don't use it, use these guys. For the beacon device, you can hide the HUD icon at different distances if you want. In the big rig spawner, in color and style, you can actually change the default colors of the thing to have a preset color. So it'd be sunflower, or chrome, or blue. And a bunch of other vehicle devices also has this feature too. In the billboard device, you can change the resolution multiplier to change the memory of the device by sacrificing the quality of the text. But the one thing you need to know about scaling is that if you scale it to, right now it's 1, but if you put it on to 5, which is the max, that isn't scaling the memory by 5, that's scaling the memory by 5 times 5. That's actually 25 times the memory. So taking up too much memory, that might be why. In the biplane spawner, you can turn on allow glider redeploy, and that'll make it so if the player jumps out, they'll be able to redeploy the glider and save themselves. In the boat spawner, you can turn off the option to have the weapon enabled, so you can have that little like missile launcher if you don't want it. So you can turn it on or off. In the bomb flower, you can make it so it'll launch the flower as like a little projectile if you hit it. Now next up is the bouncer gallery, and all of these are just kind of the same, but you can make it so these devices actually heal the player if they jump on it. So you can make it insta heal, or you can make it periodic heal, and you can change the kill amount, heal intervals, and heal duration. And then in the button device, if you don't like the button, you can actually do visible during game off and then increase the radius, and now you have an invisible button that you can just put on anything. In the camera fixed angle, you can use this to make top downs, you can use it to make it isolate isometric, so you can make side scrollers with this, which is pretty cool. Now the fixed point camera, if you're in Creative 1.0, the fixed point camera is good to make little cutscenes or taking little in-game screenshots of your map in Creative 1.0 if you don't have UEFN. And then the camera orbit is a good way to make early first person, and also you can also do orbit cameras with it, which is cool. In the cozy campfire device, you can change the option to affects AI, make it so you can repel AI, damage AI, or also repel or damage AI. So like, let's say if you're over here and the AI wants to come over like a wolf, they get too close to the campfire, they'll get repelled and they can't go close to it, or they get damaged, or whatever you want. Cannon spawner, one tip about the cannon spawner is that the player can hop inside of it and launch themselves, so you can use that to do whatever you want. In the capture area, you can make it so the player has to be holding an item to capture. So let's say if you're making a capture the flag, you can add in flag, and here's flag, so you will need a flag, and then you can do item filter, and you can do to take control, and now to get a score or whatever, you need a flag or something, and that can be any item you like. Or another way you do it is in the capture item spawner, and this is probably more built for capture the flag, where you can transmit on channels on picked up, on dropped, on returned, and on captured, so you can detect all that and you can do whatever. So you can do it like this in the capture area, but this is probably the better way in the capture item spawner. Now in the chair device, you can actually make it so there's a custom model, so the player will sit on a cylinder. In the changing booth, just be aware when you use it, there's going to be a giant icon on top of it that appears from literally everywhere in the map. So if you're using it in the map, just make sure you know about that. Now in the character device, Epic a few months back added over 900 skins to the device. So you can use a lot of skins. So for example, you can use like Midas or whatever you want. In the channel device, you can make custom global events, and you can listen for global events. So I can call this, so it's like reach checkpoint. I can listen for that in another channel device. So now this will be listening for this, and then if it hears it, it'll transmit or whatever. And the character device controller, in character slots, you can set this to a custom slot, so I'll make it 1. And back in our character device, go into the events, and then in here you'll see character slots, so I'll make that to 1. So now this is hooked up to this character device controller, and you can control all of these now. In the chests and ammo gallery, the normal chests will inherit current Battle Royale loot pool. Excluding this chest, will give you Greek mythology stuff, and of course ammo will give you ammo, and produce box will give you produce. In the cinematic sequence, there's an option for visibility, and you can make it so it's only instigator only, and so that means for only the player that instigates, they'll only be able to see the sequence. So if you want to make a sequence that only plays per player and other players can see it, except for that one player who's playing the sequence, you can use this option to do that. In the class designer, you can use this to make your very own classes. So you can make a class slot, you can make a class name, and then you can change literally everything about whatever. And then the picker class, you want to use the class selector, and once the player enters this zone, or when the change player to class thing is played, you can change the player to a different class. You can also do teams as well. And then the class selector UI is a UI to choose your class, and in the class designer, you can actually enable and disable when the classes are shown in the UI. In the collectible object, you can actually go down to custom mesh, and you can add in your own mesh, like this boulder. So now this is a collectible. In the color choosing tiles, you can go into appearance and you can make it into a disco. In the conditional button, if you put in items like gold or something, you actually don't need the player to fully interact with the button. You can use the activate function. You can also then use unactivated and not enough items to then see if the player has enough items or not. In the consumables gallery, each of these little consumables have their own little abilities. So this hop rock would give you like low gravity. This would give you, super speed. These will give you shields and, the slurp. And then this apple will heal you. The control side scroller will add in side scroller controls. So if you use this with the fixed angle camera as a side scroller, you can add in side scroller controls to your level. And also you can use the control third person device to make, controls for third person. So that'll be more for the orbit camera. For the crash pad, you can change the visual style to original or target. If a player interacts with the creator profile device, it will show off a little QR code, and if they scan it, it'll lead them to your creator page. The creature placer can be used to place creatures individually. The creature manager can be used to manage different health and damage and movement speed and score and damage the environment of every single version of any version of a zombie. And then the creature spawner is more like it'll spawn in like a bunch of different kinds of zombies, and you can change the different kinds of zombies here.
The creeping cardboard is kind of unique, where it's the only device in the game where a player can throw it down using
using an item, and then it can stay persistent in the level, and you can like hop on it and do stuff. So you can do some cool puzzles where you stack boxes on top of each other to get past somewhere or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. In the crowd volume, you can change the character angle randomness and also the character scale randomness to add a little bit more randomization to make it look a bit less uniform. In the customizable light, cast shadows is kind of important because this can drastically increase in performance if you turn this off, if you have so many lights in your level. So if your level is lagging, it's probably because you have cast shadows on with too many lights. So turn it off. Using the customizable lights, including this one and also this one, you can use the option to set to team color to make the light turn to the color of the team who's currently trying to turn it on. So let's say if you use like the capture spawner from earlier, you can use this in tandem with that to make it look like a team has captured an area. The D-Launcher gallery, including the D-Launcher invasion, primal one, and the standard one, you can turn on the option to allow physics objects, and basically what this means is that any object that isn't like a projectile or a player, if it has physics, will be launched by this this device. Later on in the future, when Fortnite adds in physics, you'll be able to use this to launch objects, so just keep that in mind. In the damage amplifier power, you can change the damage multiplier for the player by moving this around. But the thing that people might not know is that you can actually pick up on a channel, so you don't actually have to have the player walk into it. Now the player do an event, and then it will automatically pick up the thing and they'll get the abilities. You can also do clear 2 to make it so that they lose the damage amplifier. In the damage volume, you can set it to different damage types, so there's damage and there's also elimination. Now damage is useful for, let's say, something you don't want to kill the player, but you just want to give them a little bit of damage. You can use this. You can also change the damage to grade 2, or you can do elimination with insta kills the player. In the dance mannequin, you can make it so in character skin default preset, you can go all the way down to custom character cosmetics, and you can use the 900 whatever skins the character device had. In the day sequence device, one little tip is that if you use the clouds modifier, you're going to get rid of the default clouds, so you lose the volumetric clouds. So you can keep this off if you want to keep the default volumetric clouds. And just a quick other tip, because I'm talking about this, go into world settings and you can change the world time of day manager to chapter 4, and what this means is that you can get a different kind of style of volumetric clouds in your level. And if you're really cool, paste this, it's going to be in the description. You can paste into world time of day manager, and what this is the legacy sky. So this is from Creative 1.0. So if you want to get some legacy sky, you can do that. In the decal device, this is basically how do you make sprays on walls, kind of like how you would be able to do it in Creative 1.0, and you'd be able to like add little patterns of whatever you like. The FN mannequin, or device mannequin, is basically kind of like the animated mesh player. So if I change that mesh back to the one I had earlier, and then I change the walking to this, you're gonna see if I change the initial position, you're gonna see the animation play. For the dirt bike spawner, you can change the vehicle speed tunings to either chapter 4 battle royale or current battle royale. So if you like the way it worked in chapter 4, you can use that, or you can, if you like the way it worked in chapter 5, you can use this one. In the down but not out device, you can from a distance force down a player, so they have to go in the crawl mode, and you can also revive them too. If you want to make something that like the player falls over or they trip or something, or like for a cutscene, or if you want them to enter like a vent and they can crawl through a vent or something, you can use this. Fun little fact about the driftboard spawner, you can actually ride it on water. In the elimination manager, you can actually track what kind of target type tag the kill is, or the elimination is. So you can do all types, players only, all creatures, and you can see all of these. You can pick exactly what you want. You can then do a channel for on elimination or uneliminated. In the end game device, you can add your own custom post game animation by using all of these like little settings and changing them around. In the explosive device, you can actually change the device mesh to make it something different, like a cone or something. If you want to make it look a bit different, you can use this. If it's Nitro Fang spawner, you can actually, there's actually 3 different kinds of vehicle types, which is the Nitro Fang, the Pizza Pit Fang, and also the Thorns Fang. Depending on which kind of car you want, you can change it around. With the fire volume, like earlier with the environment damage and island settings, you can actually, in allow objects to ignite, you can actually change it so you can override the option of the island settings. In the Firefly spawner, you can set a hard limit of the total spawn, so you maybe only make only 7 spawn, and then after a while, you can use a channel to reset respawn count, and then that will allow more fireflies to spawn. In containers like the fishing rod or even the chests over here, you can actually change you can change the searching sound loop. You can change the loot sound. You can change the undamaged sound. You cannot change on the on-death sound. In the fishing zone, you can actually override items inside the fishing zone to add your own items inside of here. So let's say if you wanted to get 80 nanites from a fishing zone, you can do that. In the fuel pump, usually you would use this to fuel cars, but if you make it not indestructible, you can actually blow it up and do a big explosion. With the volcano geyser C device, you can change the bubbling of the bubbling color. So if I change the red, it's not going to be red. And in the Kevin rune vent, there's actually no options. So that's a little tip for you. So you can't really change that much. The grind power up, this allows the player to get all slippery and like to slide around. Similar to the damage amplifier, you can actually go into here and you can do pick up and clear from a distance. So you don't have to actually have the player walk inside of this and get the ability. In the grind well, you can actually change the visual style to make it look like a wire if you want. And you can then change the wire decoration to patio lights or festival lights. And then in the grind vine, this is basically the exact same as a grind rail, but you can create additional grass and you can make a little bit more grass. And the guard device, if you remember from earlier with the elimination manager, the guard type is very important in detecting what kind of guards you're killing. So you can do shadow, ghost, grotto, shark, rig, kit, IO, or trespassers. And basically, the reason why you can change this is because in the elimination manager, you can actually detect the exact types of what guard. So shadow guard, ghost guard, grotto guard, shark guard, whatever guard. And the healing cactus, you can force burst, so you can make it so it like, you know, bursts everywhere. In the health power up, there's a few different ways you can heal the player. In flat increase, you can just add flat health, so you can add 20 HP. In percentage increase, that adds percentage, so you can add 20% of the HP they currently have to the HP they now have. You can do flat decrease, so it does the minus 20 HP, percentage decrease, which is, you know, minus 20%, and then set 2, which is setting to a health, so it's like, you know, 100 or 200 or 300 or whatever. The heavy turret counts as a vehicle, so you can actually track when a player enters, when a player exits, when a vehicle spawns, and when the vehicle is destroyed. So the helicopter spawner, you can add this option, or for many different cards called fuel consumption, and you can make it so you can use a certain amount of fuel from how long you're doing it. You can also change the starting fuel too. With this, the player will need to manually fuel it, either with a jerry can or one of these at the fuel pump. In the hiding props gallery with the porta potty, the haystack, and the dumpster, you can change the number of occupants, so you can change it up to 100. So you can have up to 100 people inside of here if you want. In the hollow screen, this is all from season 9, chapter 1, back in the day. And then Neo tilted and all that, so you can use all of these signs. One shot, Heelys, Durburger, just build, whatever you like. The hover platform is a good way to make it so the player can build on floating places. It's I'm on a floating island, but I'm not connected to the ground, so I'm not connected to the structure build. I can put this underneath it, and then I'll be able to build on top of it, presuming I build this on the grid. In the HUD controller, you can actually make HUD priorities. So if you go down here to priority, you can make it so there's a priority, so you can have the lowest priority, very low, low, normal, all the way to the highest. And the reason why you do this is if you have two HUDs and one of them, let's say, is a HUD that has less stuff on it. So let's say if this HUD is for like cutscenes and then this HUD is for gameplay, you can make it so the gameplay one has the lowest priority and then the cutscene one has the highest priority. So you can only enable and disable this one when the cutscene plays, and then that will automatically override this. But when this gets disabled, you'll go back to this one. The HUD message device, you can actually add in intro animations and outro animations, and there's a bunch of different presets to use, like slow fade and zoom and whatever. For the input trigger device, it's important to have mobile UI. This allows mobile players to use the input trigger, so just make sure you make all this and make the mobile color and change the icon so they can use the button. In the island settings, make sure you don't accidentally delete this device, because sometimes in UEFN you can delete this and your game won't start. You won't be able to see the button. That is why you need this in your level. In the item granter, ungrant action, it's important to know that you can clear inventory, clear items, clear resources, or keep all. Usually you just want to keep all, but you can do all of these if you want. In the item placer, it actually just got a recent update where you can actually change the cost of the item, so you can make it so it costs 10,000 gold to pick up. In the item remover, you can actually remove a percentage of items, so you don't actually have to remove all your items. So let's say if you die, you'll only lose, let's say, 20% of, let's say, your gold. The item spawner, you can change the item scale so the item looks bigger if you wanted to. For the lock device, sometimes it can bug out where even if you have unlock on, sometimes the door can still be open. So just to make sure, on the same time of unlock, you also want to open the door at the same time. With the map controller, you can actually twist it to get side-on no projections of a map. In the map indicator device, you can actually change the custom icon material to something like, let's say, an image you want. In the matchmaking portal, you can actually enable as art. For now, like in 2.0, you don't really need to do this anymore because you can just import your own image. But if you're in 1.0 and you're set limitations, you can use this as an option to get some custom images. In the message feed device, you can actually use it to make your own custom messages inside of the text. So you can do like, wow. And you can activate it here. The thing about the large modded weapon case is that you actually can't change the weapon inside of here. If you go in the game, you're stuck with these defaults. So just keep that in mind if you're going to use these. Also look how high the memory is. Oh my goodness. For the mount and turn, you can actually move this using a prompt mover or inside a sequencer. So if you want to make a moving gun, you can do that. For the movement modulator, you can actually make it so you activate it on a distance, so you can get the modulator effects, which is like you can either affect the movement speed or get an impulse which launches the player on its channel. Using the mutator zone, if you're making a cutscene, one of the useful things you can do with it is if you make the zone size like ginormous, so like this big, enable during phase none, and then you can do allow jumping off, and then you can do movement multiplier off. Also do allow map marker, remote wheel, turn off the effects. Once you enable it, this is really useful to make the player in a cutscene not be able to move around or not be able to interact, so they can let the cutscene play out. So if you enable it when the cutscene plays, the player won't be able to move and won't be able to do anything. In the nitro barrel, you can change the launch force multiplier, so when it blows up, you can make it so like you'll get shot back further if you want. In the Nitro Drift spawner, or really any other car, you can pop all tires if you wanted to on a channel. So if you didn't like the tires, you can pop all the tires if you wanted to. In the Nitro Hoop, you can make it so you can add columns. So you can add maybe 1 column, 2 columns, and you can make it so that the Nitro Hoop is higher. And you can also add a stand at the very bottom to make it so it looks a bit better. So now we have beautiful ginormous hoop. For the NPC spawner, if I'm being honest, probably a good tip was just to watch my video on it. For the objective device, you can change the mesh to be something else. So you can make it a burger head, or you can make it a tomato head. You can make it like a satellite dish, a server rack, a single bed, Arctic, base transmitter, sphere, a cylinder, or a cube. Or you can add in your own custom mesh, which can be really anything that you want. So you can make it a boulder. The Octane spawner spawns in the Octane from Rocket League. And you can add in boosts, so you can have standard boost, or regenerate boost, or infinite boost. The perception trigger, this is really useful for like something like a camera. If there's like a stealth, the player has to be stealth and sneak around somewhere. This is very good to make some cameras. Oh yeah, you know how I said earlier about the D launchers having there's no other physics objects? Well, these are the physics objects. There's the boulder, and then there's the tree. And basically what you can do with both of these is you can, if they were to be broken or fall down and become physics, if they fall onto one of these with the option of allow physics objects, they'll be able to bounce around. So you can bounce around boulders if you want to. In the pickup truck spawner, or really any other vehicle, you can allow the option to damage other vehicles. So if you crash into other vehicles, will it damage them or not? The pinball bumper, you can change the knockback of the player to be very big, so you can launch the player into the stratosphere. Pinball flipper, you can change the flip directions, so you can make it counterclockwise off, clockwise opposite, same with flip flop. This will just change the direction that the player will get flipped in according to where the flipper is flipping. The placeable ledge is really cool because you can actually change the mesh of it, so you make it so it's something else like a cube. The spawn pad has a unique option for spawn player. What it'll do is it'll force spawn a player if you have respawn alive players checked on. This is kind of like a teleporter where you can spawn the player immediately. So this is a good way to make it so it doesn't lag. And then in the player checkpoint pad, you can have an option to reset the inventory. So if the player goes onto it, their inventory gets reset. So if you don't want them having an item after a certain point, you can do this and they'll lose their items. In the player counter, let's say we need at least 4 players to enter an area. You can have this here, and then you can add a zone. Then the 4 players will need to be in this zone, and then if they press like a button to start something, you can pair the players, and if it's all the players that are in the zone, you can do on counts succeeded or whatever. The player marker is a good way to give players a custom icon using this here right here, and show the little icon on the map to everybody else. So let's say there's a hunter that's trying to kill people. You have a little danger skull thing, and then that'll make it so players know that player is deadly. And you can add this to the player by using the attach to player event or function. Using the player reference, you can actually get rid of the hologram strength. You can also make this show base off. It's off right now. You can still see it. So then you can make it so the player's character is, in the game. The pop-up dialog device has a max of 6 buttons, and you can transmit on responding on all these buttons on that. This is important to know because if you're using a modular widget and you have over 6 buttons on your widget, you won't be able to use all 6 buttons because there's only 6 channels you can get out of. But if you want more buttons on your UI, you want to use verse. Using the post-process device, you can add in your own custom post-process effect. You know this map to make it look so there's like a little filter on it. You can use the prop manipulator to override resources of an item. So if I do override resources and I can do item list like wood, you can use this chair, then I can do an override of the item, put this prop manipulator on the item, and then now if I mine this chair, if I have modified prop health on and I do prop health 50, if I mine this chair, I'll get some wood for it. In the prop mover, there's 2 functions for rotate clockwise and rotate counterclockwise. The thing about these is that they actually don't work. They are actually fake. You can't use these, so just keep that in mind. The prop-o-matic manager is how you'd manage the prop gun for something like prop hunt. And you can use this device to track on if players are going into a disguise, exiting disguise, or you can track this if the player is starting to go into a disguise, if they won't go into disguise, and you can also do it on when they exit disguise. And you can also force ping player props, and you can do all of this if you want. You can also ping all the players' props, or you can toggle ping props, or whatever you want. For the post trigger, who used to be known as the sequencer, you can turn on the option for damage, and you can turn the wave that it makes, the line, into a deadly a hologram that kills you. It moves depending on what tempo and whatever you have. For the quad pressure spawner, and for really any other vehicle, you can turn on destroy when stuck underwater. There's an automatic destruction timer for if it goes underwater. Using the race checkpoint, you can change the allowed vehicles to whatever vehicles, so you can do ground vehicles, water vehicles, or air vehicles. So you can make it so it's only an air race, or only a ground race, or only a water race. You can use the race manager to set the number of laps of the race. You can change the race name in here, and you can do a bunch of other stuff. You can start the race, end the race, on race completed, and on lap completed, and stuff like that. In the radio device, you want to make sure that anything you're using is the looping audio file. For example, I got this little sound effect. Just make sure on any sound effect for radio, you want to right click it, go into create queue, and then inside the queue you want to open it, and then you want to click on this, and then you want to go into looping and click on and save. So now this should work more better in a radio device if you were going to use it. For the random number generator, you can add in a zone, and this basically will add in you can make it so you can place triggers inside of here, and you can activate the triggers. The real-time clock can show the real time of the day, which is very cool. On the 28th of December 2027, this clock will tick down. In a UEFN, you can actually change the recharge time to be a bit lower or higher or whatever. So depending on how long you want delay to take between revives. In the round settings device, you can make it so you can change the rounds, and you can make it so different rounds have different settings that you can use. The rocket racing vehicle spawner, or RR vehicle spawner, is just like the Octane over here. So it actually uses the rocket racing mechanics instead of the regular Rocket League mechanics. So just keep that in mind. The save point device is a way to allow the player to save their progress between games. But there's an option to allow the player to clear data. If you turn that on, the player can go into the menu and clear their own data. The score manager is a really good way to count how much score the team has. The minimum score of 0, max score maybe 5, and then once the player reaches 5 score, on max triggers, you can do that, or on score outputs, you can also channel. So it's very useful. For the stand spawner, in here you can turn on the option radio enabled, and you can turn that off if you don't like the radio being on. For the sentry device, my only tip for this is to not use this, use the guard device. But if you're going to use this, you can actually set the sentry scale to spawner size. So if you do that, you increase the size of the sentry will be this big in game. The shopping cart, I'm running out of vehicle stuff, but you make the vehicle indestructible, so you don't eat the vehicle can be infinite HP, or you can use vehicle health, which will make the vehicle have only a certain health. For the siege cannon, you can make it so there's a loud class, so only a certain class can go inside of it, or only an activating team on a team index can go inside of it. For the signal remote manager, this is a way for people in creative. You can use the signal remote items like this. You can use it in conjunction with this item right here. Allow the player to press buttons on this item, and then you can use this to detect channels on primary activation, which is left click, and secondary fire, which is right click. For the skydive volume, you can add in an option to lock up affected players in the volume, and you have this on, the players will be stuck inside of this volume and they won't be able to exit. But if you turn this off, they'll be able to fly out of the volume. The slurp plant is a plant where if you break it or launch it on a hit, it will explode and it'll heal all players around it with slurp effects. So that's kind of useful. In the sports bike spawner, again, I'm running out of vehicle stuff, but you can enable respawn. You can make it so the respawn time of the bike or really any vehicles is a certain amount of time, or you can just make it so enable respawn is off. And for the whiplash, just make sure that ever since they added car cosmetics, the sports car / whiplash will get overridden with their custom car. Now, let's say if you didn't want that, go to Airliner, you go to Island Settings, you go into Vehicles, enable Vehicle Cosmetics, and if you turn this off, then that'll make it so you'll use the whiplash instead of their own custom car. And for the stink flower, right now you can actually see the stink flower for some reason, but if you break this, it'll make a big cloud of stink. So basically a gas cloud, which the player will die in. In the supply draw spawner, you can change the balloon style of the balloons, so you can make old school, make a birthday, or you can make a holiday balloon. And then the surfboard spawner is literally the exact same vehicle as the drift board over here. The SUV spawner can make it so there's explosion delay, so if it blows up, you can add a little explosion delay if you don't want it to explode immediately. In the switch device, if you have store state per player, state of the switch will only be saved for the player. Individual switch with their individual state, like for every single player that plays the game. So one player's switch can be on, another player's switch can be off, and this is very useful to track if players have completed things, or if they're able to access a location, or if they're able to, you know, use an item or something. The sword and the stone device is a really old device. They came out like all the way back when the Infinity Blade was added to Fortnite. You know, it's pretty old. It does have a cool animation when you pick it up, so if you want to use it, you can. The tank spawner is pretty cool because in game, some people forget the tank has a cannon, but it also has the little turret on the top where another player can be inside of it and shoot around. So just keep that in mind if you're using the tank. In target dummy, you can use this to you can shoot it with a gun, and you can use all of these different like channels, so, you know, hit on bullseye hits, all that to do your own thing. Same with this one, except it's on a track, so it'll be able to go back and forth, and you can change the speed, you can change the length of the track, and stuff like that. In the taxi spawner, or really any other vehicle, you can go into damage friendly fire, and this will make it so if another player on your team in a car crashes into your car, it will let your car take damage, or vice versa. If you turn this off, you can't damage other team members' cars, but if you turn this on, you can. The team settings and inventory, this is a good way to make your own custom teams. So you can add your own team name, and you add your own team description, you make your own color, and then you can do all these settings, and you can override all of these for what team you're in, which is very useful. In the teleport device, if you look at it, there's a little arrow coming out of it, and then face the player in teleport direction. You set this to yes, the player will face in the direction of this little line. In the timed objective, you can add a little timer to this. You can have like a certain amount of time before something happens. So you can start the timer, stop the timer, restart the timer, pause the timer, you can do whatever. And then in the timer device, you can actually use this with persistence or saving. You auto save the timer, so if let's say the player is, you know, if the player has 60 minutes and if they leave the session at 27 minutes, when they join back, the timer will be at 27 instead of 60. In the track device, you can make your own custom HUD widgets, which I'm going to make a tutorial on in the future. I do have a tutorial on it, but in Fall Guys, but it still works for regular maps, so if you want to go check that out, you can. And then in the trick tile device, you can use this to make little hidden floors. So let's say if I walk on top of it, the floor's gonna break and I fall down. That's what this is for, which is kind of cool. Finally, the grandfather of all devices. So the trigger device, there's a bunch of different options here for triggered by player, by damage, by items, by vehicles, by creatures, by sequencers, by water. And you could use all these options to change different criteria for how the trigger gets triggered. It's very useful. In the UFO spawner, you can enable the tractor beam or not, and you can also just enable the cannon or not. The vehicle restore station, you can use this to repair and also fuel up the vehicle if it goes inside of here, which is very cool. And you can also track all of this and everything that can happen inside of here with a lot of events here. In the vending machine, you can add your own items inside of here, like a bow, let's say a boom bolt or whatever, and you can change the costs of items. Costs of maybe gold, at least 759 gold to buy this crossbow. Now for the VFX creator, my one tip for this, if you're going to use this device, don't use it in UEFN. Go into a session and then edit it in there because it's a lot easier and actually works. Or just use Niagara because this is better than this. And then with the VFX power up, if you do visual effect and you do custom effect, you can change the custom effect socket. So you can make it on the base, pelvis, wherever on the player. And then you can use this with Niagara to make your own custom hats with custom, like, you know, stuff or whatever. I'll make a tutorial on this in the future. And then in the VFX spawner, you can actually use this to not just make VFX, you can also use it to make some sound effects. You can use this to get wind sound effects or a lot of other sound effects that you maybe won't be able to get in the default sound effects. In the video player, the only way to use this device is explicit permission from Epic to put in your own videos and, you know, have dev, access. So if you're trying to get this to work, don't even bother because you won't be able to use this video player. For the volume, you can actually add in your own custom volume by using custom shape, turn it on, and then in custom volume mesh, you can add in your own custom mesh so I can make a boulder. So now we have a custom volume for a boulder, and then you can detect if the player goes in and out of this custom volume on these. For the Warpbow spawner, you can add in the option to, you can change the explosion damage to the environment or players to vehicles by changing these options here. In the water device, it's by default on gameplay only, but if you do on always, you'll be able to go in the water in create mode. For the weapon mod bench, you can change the mod cost by going to here and then changing the mod cost. And then for the wallboy spawner, you can go down to riding and you can add in the option to allow the player to ride the animal if you have either the wolf, the boar, or the raptor. And then last but not least, the zipline, you can use a custom color and you can change the color to whatever you want, so blue. There we go, we have a blue zipline now. And then that will do it for every single Fortnite creative device in the game. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. This took way longer than I was expecting, but anyways, remember to like, subscribe, and use my code in the Fortnite shop. And watch all of these videos for more of my content. So yeah, that's about it. I'll see you all around.